Welcome back to LePodcast episode 88. As always, you're here with Hoop and Sainey. Today's deep dive is on Carmelo Anthony. Boy, am I excited.
Oh, I know you are. Just as a quick little warning from the beginning, this is gonna be a hoop spotlight episode. That's his boy, so I'm gonna let him take I'm gonna let you take the driver's seat for this one, bro. I'm gonna sit passenger.
I appreciate that. But I think before we get into it, we should explain maybe our week and a half absence.
Yes. So as you guys know, we didn't post an episode last week. We didn't post an episode this weekend either. This episode is technically coming late, as we usually post on Monday. And that's obviously on us. We apologize. There were a few things that kind of came up on the business end of things. So if you're a OG fan, as you know, this was around the time where we signed our first deal. And we are in the process of re-signing a new deal. I'm not going to go too much into details on what's going to happen, as we want to make sure everything is 100% in place before anything happens. But obviously last week was really business filled. It was very stressful for me and Hoop. We were trying to figure out new details for our new contract, because obviously we only signed a 1-year deal the year prior. And we're in a good spot now. We're able to record again, obviously stress-free. And we're going to be back to our regular posting. Again, we apologize. We should have probably let you guys off with some warning, letting you know, like, hey, we're going to take a little bit of a break.
Free agency was wild this year.
But it's good. Everything's moving good. We don't want you guys to think that we broke up or anything. Obviously, I mean, it's only been a week off. Everybody deserves a break. Not that we wanted to take a break, honestly. I would have loved to record an episode.
Don't say that. No breaks. No breaks.
No, I would have loved to record an episode, but genuinely, like, you guys got to understand, like, with the whole back end with, like, production and all that stuff, there is a lot of things that you don't really factor in if you're a listener. And I didn't factor in until we started doing this, right? So we wanted to make sure everything was in place before obviously getting back to it. But we're in a really good spot now. I think me and Hoop are both very happy, and we're able to record comfortably again. But I'm going to leave it at that. Obviously, there were a few surprises that may come up in the future, but that's all I'm going to say.
The team morale is up.
The team morale is up. Team chemistry plus 15%. But I will say this real quick before we start the episode, as always. As you guys know, I mentioned it in the Jimmy episode as well. I mentioned it in all the pods, but usually at the end, I want to mention it at the beginning. We, by far, like, it's so awesome to see all the responses we get on the Spotify episode. The Jimmy one, we got the most responses by far, because I said it at the beginning, so I'll love to say it again. Please make sure to show love to this episode by commenting, and that includes criticism. If you have any criticism towards the episode, please let us know, because we will nitpick and try to improve on anything you guys want us to improve on. And also the love we get, we genuinely sit down and we read through everything. It's so awesome to see. We also have polls that you can kind of react to that are related to the episode. It takes the click of a button, and we kind of ask you guys questions. We get your guys' opinion and feedback on certain things we ask throughout the episode. And it's just so awesome to see you guys included in the stuff that we do, because obviously you guys are the driving factor to everything we do over at LePodcast. So if you have the time, please take the extra second to either show us love or criticism, whatever it may be. We accept both. And without further ado, Hoop, if you want to get us started with the episode.
I don't accept criticism.
Yes.
Speak for yourself, dog.
Man, we need the constructive criticism over here.
I agree. But starting off with Melo, the draft, it was 2000. This is the loaded draft with LeBron and Darko Milicic went second to the Pistons. Chris Bosh went 4 after Melo went 3. So it's LeBron, Darko, Melo, Chris Bosh, and then Dwayne Wade 5th, followed up by Chris Kaman, legend Kirk Heinrich, TJ Ford. The Knicks took Mike Sweetney, and Washington took Jarvis Hayes.
I want to say this real quick. Of course, out of all the players named, the one I do not recognize at all is the Knicks pick. That's all I'm gonna say.
Sweet. I never heard of him either. Maybe I'm just young. Player comparison out of college. I mean, first off, we don't want to get too deep into the very early years of Melo, because there's a lot of drama that happens later. Of course, in Syracuse as a freshman, he led the team to a national title. One of the best college runs that have ever been. I don't know why Darko went over Melo, but LeBron was obviously the chosen one. So there's a lot of what ifs with the Detroit Pistons, especially with how stacked they were defensively. If they were to draft Melo, there's a lot of people who say that the coach over there would have ruined Melo because he didn't like his style of play, but that's not here nor there. He's in Denver. The player comparison for Melo was Glenn Robinson, who is not like a household name, but he did average 20 per game through an 11-year career.
He's a 2K my team.
Yeah,
type of
yeah,
name.
yeah. On Milwaukee, with the cool jerseys, with like the purple buck, like that's the type of era we're talking about. That's how the young people know. Bro, he's the 2K guy with the cool jersey.
He's the number 40 man. Yeah.
Strengths here, I have like a player comparison, like a draft analysis. His strengths was a fluid player who shows great athleticism despite not having overly explosive leaping ability. Possesses a quick first step, which helps him gain separation from his defender to set up a drive to the basket. Excellent slasher. Once he gets to the basket, he has the creativity to make spectacular plays due to his cat-like body control. Solid rebounder thanks to his long arms and hustle. Has range on his jump shot as he can shoot from mid-range or behind the three-point line. Has an innate feel for the game that most players have to develop. I think they were glazing his finishing a little too much.
They got to start paying these agents more, or these not agents, sorry, these scouts. That was a beautiful. So if I were to read that going into the league though, like reading that description of Melo, and I don't watch college basketball, that is a pretty good description of Melo.
And to be fair, like he was very athletic as a like
he was he was.
The thing about it though that I think we might give the scouts a little too much credit. I feel like I mentioned it before. They're literally watching the player.
True. True.
It's like, I saw him once.
True that.
Like it's really hard to lie about a guy if you're watching.
Yeah,
him
that's very
long,
true. That's very true. But there's some scouts who, like for example, like the Curry scout report is always infamous, right?
Yeah.
Some of them be gassing players up, and they come and do nothing.
Yeah.
But it always is cool to see like a scout report, which I guess you're right because all of our deep dives have been on players who panned out well, so that's why the scouts to me always seem awesome. But I want to one day do a deep dive. I want to do a deep dive on like Ian Mahimi or something and see like what his scout report was saying. Like, you know what I mean? I need to start judging scouts off of the bad players, and then we'll see what. No disrespect, all these players are by far miles ahead of me when it comes to life, so I'm not disrespecting anybody here. But compared to other NBA players,
miles ahead of you when it comes to life.
Bro, they got $1 million, and I'm trying to pay student debt.
I don't think we could make a Ian Mahimi episode that goes more than 20 minutes. So I think instead we maybe do just a draft bust episode, which would be a lot of fun.
That would be cool. Yeah, we're looking into doing deep dives on just like situations instead of just players. Yeah.
So that'd be dope. Weaknesses here for Melo. Defensively, he needs to improve on his perimeter defense, such as lateral quickness and footwork. Anthony at times can be such a dominant scorer that he can freeze teammates out of a game. So getting his teammates involved in the offense should be worked on. Pretty spot on.
That is, again, like spot on.
So now he's in Denver.
Yeah.
Joining a 17-win franchise.
Yep. And I'm going to touch base on his rookie season here. Most importantly, and for the young generation that doesn't know, the 2003-2004 Rookie of the Year race. One of the most infamous Rookie of the Year battles came in the 03-04 season, where LeBron and Melo were neck and neck in their rookie campaigns. And as stated by Carmelo Anthony himself, I should have won that, everybody knows. Comparing them head-to-head, LeBron ended his rookie year being the third rookie in NBA history at the time to average 25-5 in his rookie year, putting up 20.9 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, and 5.9 assists per game on 43.8% from the field. Funny enough, at the time he was the third player, but guess who was the next player to do it? Tyreek Evans. Crazy, right? Compared to Carmelo Anthony's 21 points per game with 6.1 rebounds per game and 2.8 assists per game on 44.9% from the field. Melo also had a higher win share with 6.1 compared to LeBron's 5.1. For those who don't know, win share is a measure that is assigned to a players based on their offense, defense, and playing time. Carmelo also led his team to the playoffs that season, taking the team's record from 17-65 the season before he joined, all the way up to 43-39.
That is absurd.
While Cleveland had the same record the prior season, but still finished below 500, LeBron's rookie year ending at 35-47 for the season, missing the playoffs.
LeFraud.
Melo also had a higher true shooting percentage with 50.9, while LeBron finished with 48.8. And I see a big thing around the reason why LeBron was put ahead of Melo is because he was much better defensively. but that was just not the case. Melo had an offensive rating of 102 and a defensive rating of 105, while LeBron James...
Is Sainey a casual? Are you using defensive rating to judge a player's defense?
I'm just bringing up stats. People like to bring up advanced stats.
That's
still,
a nasty
I'm still going to bring up
stat.
stats. But, okay, can I finish?
Do you know what defensive rating is?
Yeah, it's the amount of points allowed per 100 possessions while you're on the court.
But while the other 4 players on your team are also on the court.
Don't care. I'm bringing it up.
Oh my gosh.
Don't care. I'm bringing it up. It's still a stat that I think is valuable. You're still one out of 5 players on the court. It's still something that you could bring up. I'm just can I finish the point?
All right,
because I'm not saying LeBron and Melo were the same defensively.
I don't think
the
defensive
rookie
rating
season,
leaders this season. Hold up. Go ahead.
Anyway,
Carry on.
LeBron had an offensive rating of 99 and a defensive rating of 104. So only had the 104 compared to the 105. It's not like eye-popping to me. Melo seemed to have more individual and team success than LeBron in his rookie season, but LeBron still ran away with the trophy. The voting went as follows. James won 508 points over Melo's 430 points. Quick fact I want to throw in here. Kirk Heinrich finished with more points for Rookie of the Year than Chris Bosh. Just want to show some love to Captain Kirk. LeBron also received 78 of the 118 first-place votes, showing that more than half of the media agreed he was the Rookie of the Year. I want to also point out some more facts that help contribute to Melo's case for Rookie of the Year, as this is a Melo deep dive. Melo led the Nuggets to 26 more wins than they had the prior season, which at the time was the biggest jump by any team in NBA history that had won less than 20 games the prior season. And for those who want to say the Nuggets must have just had more of a complete roster, they actually lost their best player in Juwan Howard heading into Melo's rookie season and lost their second leading scorer in James Posey. To be fair, though, Marcus Camby was coming back and he was healthy for that Denver team, but Denver lost a lot of pieces. It's not like they improved tremendously. LeBron also averaged more minutes and had a higher usage rate than Melo, and something that leans heavily in LeBron's favor is his assists and his assist-to-turnover ratio. But when you're Cleveland's primary ball handler from day one, it makes sense why he dominates Melo in that category. LeBron also is better in basically every advanced statistic. Now, something that is brought up when discussing this award on this specific season is that the NBA should have done a joint Rookie of the Year, like a co-Rookie of the Year, which I personally do not agree with, since there is always someone who is better no matter how marginal it is. And I believe either player would have been a fine choice to win the award, but I feel like especially with this new generation, myself included, before I did this research, nobody really understands how much competition LeBron had to win that award, and that Melo versus LeBron was a very legitimate argument back when they first got in the league. Now, I want to obviously throw some banter at Mr. Melo fan here and ask, do you believe Melo was snubbed for the award? And if you answer yes, do you think LeBron's impact towards the media played a role in him winning Rookie of the Year? Because obviously he was seen as the chosen one.
Dog, anyone you call the chosen one is like, and it should have been known that he was a lock for Rookie of the Year. It's like if Victor Wembanyama, let's say Chet Holmgren is like not a marginally better player, but is clearly providing more impact to the Thunder, which I could see happening.
Yeah.
But if Wembanyama is getting these crazy blocking 3-pointers and his stats are somewhat close and the Spurs win 10 more games, it's like we're going to give it to the moneymaker, you know what I mean?
But that's not what the case. I understand what you're trying to compare here, but that's not really the case with LeBron and Melo, is it? Because Melo had more wins. Even though he was only slightly better, he still looked better on the stat sheet. I mean, I guess you could look at LeBron's assist numbers, but I think comparing stats, they were about the same. But do you think LeBron's, because I think the comparison you brought up here, like Wemby had more wins or whatever, right? Like I think that's slightly different. And I also think that the hype around Melo versus LeBron was more than the hype around Chet versus Wemby, because Melo was supposed to be the second pick, by the way. I don't think you brought up in the draft. Darko was ducking Melo. They were trying to get like workouts with him, and they were trying to like compare them and see like who is this random European. There was very little insight about Darko coming into the league. I'm not sure if you know about this. He would intentionally duck workouts.
That's crazy.
No, it's a whole thing. And like Melo talked about it, and that's why Melo kind of fell. But do you think LeBron's impact towards the media played like basically the most crucial role in him getting the award over Melo?
Well, yeah,
because 78 over 108 of 118 votes for first place.
Yeah, I also think a big thing to do with it is if Melo played for the Lakers or maybe Miami or New York off rip, it would be different, because if you're making what was the record jump? 17 to 44?
43, 26 win jump.
If he does that on a team that's not Denver, I think so there's a difference. There's factors as far as like where you're playing, how LeBron was treated in the draft, and how he was going to be treated for the rest of his career.
And he went back home.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't have much to do on the court. I think it's circumstances.
Okay, fair enough.
Is that all for your Rookie of the Year segment?
Yeah, I just wanted to go over.
Sorry, I've been digging through these defensive rating leaders. Last year, Luka Doncic was 8th in defensive rating.
Okay, I'm just bringing up a stat and comparing them. Okay, yes, obviously LeBron is a better defender, but LeBron wasn't near the defender that we see him as now in his rookie season. He wasn't a great defender in his rookie season.
I'm just telling you what I think, and that defensive rating is an awful stat. Now, what I've heard from experts, this is not my opinion. I'm just spreading the word, is that the best way to figure out defense is opponent field goal percentage for the most part, especially with rim protectors.
Fair.
Opponent field goal percentage while you're on the floor, but I don't know how to find that, to be honest. So I'll just leave that out there. But
let's just move on, and we just understand that Melo versus LeBron was a very serious debate.
Yes, especially in year one. Now, aside from the 20-point per game rookie season, this was not like a sophomore slump type situation. The second year, the Nuggets improved to 49 wins when they added Kenyon Martin. As Sainey said earlier, the only real additions they made were Melo, Andre Miller, a healthy Marcus Camby, and then eventually Kenyon Martin, with Melo clearly being the centerpiece.
And they lost some roster pieces, too. So it's not like they just added those players to the roster.
Yeah. Like they lost their tank commanders at the time, and were putting up decent numbers.
The Ramon Sessions of the team, if you will.
Oh my gosh. But aside from like the big debate in the rookie year, I mean, Melo was all NBA 2 times before age 24. At age 22, he was 29 points per game. He averaged 21 points per game at 19 years old. He was considered fringe top 10 in 2006. This is still at 21 years old. I'm finding like these old blog posts about him. This guy had him 12th in the league in 2006. His description was, hit more game-winning shots than anyone in this NBA season and seems to play his best when everything is on the line. A true small forward in an age of tweeners, Melo has established the Nuggets as one of the top teams out west, and he's only going to get better. Will forever be known as the player drafted after Darko.
That's the most 2006 statement. In an age full of tweeners.
But I mean, aside from that, there's not much to do besides, I mean, there wasn't anything else going on aside from the playoffs, so that's a year ago. Man, I'm just ready to talk about the Knicks. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, speaking of the playoffs, so Melo managed to take the Nuggets to the playoffs every single season he played there. But that does not mean he saw much success, especially at the beginning. In his first 5 playoff runs, Melo had a total of 4 playoff wins, with the most wins he got in a series being 1, and getting bounced out of the first round every single time, of course. Melo and the Nuggets never saw a series go past 5 games within the first 5 seasons, with his competition being Minnesota with MVP Kevin Garnett his first season, the Spurs his second season, who were the eventual champions, the Clippers his third season, who were the 6th seed compared to the Nuggets being the 3rd seed, the Spurs again in his 4th season, who once again went on to become the champions, the Lakers in his 5th season, which was also the first time Melo had been swept. It wasn't until his 6th season that Melo finally made a run in the playoffs, where he took the Nuggets all the way to the Western Conference Finals, where they faced off against the Lakers, eventually falling short in 6 games as the Lakers went on to win the championship. And then the following season, and Melo's last season with the Nuggets, he once again gets bounced out the first round, losing to a 5th-seeded Jazz in 6 games. Now let's take a look at Melo individually in these first-round exits and figure out why he couldn't take the Nuggets out of the first round 6 of the 7 seasons he went to the playoffs with them. Melo's rookie year, I'll give him a pass. They went up against a Minnesota team with MVP Kevin Garnett, and his team had no real expectations. But I would like to point out Melo took a huge dip efficiency-wise, which seems to be a recurring event, as you'll see, shooting a horrendous 32.8% from the field and 18.2% from three. Again, he's a rookie, not much expectations coming at him. Minnesota had probably one of their best seasons of all time in franchise history with that MVP Kevin Garnett season. So whatever, I'll sweep that under the rug. Melo's second season, his efficiency dropped slightly again, but not too much, going down to 42.2% from the field, but he shot 0% from three because in the 5 games he played, he only shot 1 3 and missed it. His third season, another big dip in efficiency, shooting 33.3% from the field and once again 0% from three, only shooting 4 threes in the 5 games he played. His fourth season, even though they got bounced out again in the first round of 5 games, Melo actually put up great numbers, seeing a rise in his efficiency, shooting 48% from the field and 50% from three on 18 attempts. His fifth season, he sees another dip in efficiency, shooting 36.4% from the field and 25% from three. I'm going to skip over 09 because we're talking about first round woes here. This is the year he went to the Western Conference Finals, so they saw success in the playoff run that year. I'll give it to them. In his seventh season, Melo shot 46.4% from the field and 31.6% from three, hovering around the same efficiency we saw from him in the regular season. So in the sixth season, Melo got bounced from the first round. 3 of those seasons, his efficiency dropped terribly. 2 of them, he stayed around the same mark he did in the regular season. And in only 1 season did he rise to the occasion, but still ultimately fall short. In Melo's first season in the playoffs, he was the 3rd leading scorer with 15 points per game. In his 4th season, he was the 2nd leading scorer with 22.5 points per game. And in every other season with the first round exits, he was the leading scorer. A lot of this could be due to how the Nuggets were built. Obviously, pairing AI and Melo was not great, as it was 2 ball-dominant scorers that are awful on defense, which makes it impossible to win games. George Karl actually touched base on this when comparing Chauncey Billups and AI during their time in Denver, stating that he didn't get along with Allen Iverson and thought that he was a bad influence on Carmelo and the rest of the team, and that AI was unreliable and bailed on practice/team meetings, whereas Chauncey was the complete opposite and very professional from day one, which could hint at the fact that there could have been some locker room tension since it seemed that AI was not as committed to the team as everyone else was. It also doesn't help that in 4 of the first 5 seasons, the Nuggets were always matched up against the powerhouse with MVP Kevin Garnett in his rookie season, the Spurs twice who won the championship both of those seasons, and then the Lakers who went on to go to the finals but ultimately lose in 2008. The Clippers run, though, that was just a flop. I want to segue into my next banter point for you, Hoop, and ask, judging off of Melo's individual performances, do you think it is possible to play winning playoff basketball with Carmelo Anthony as your number 1 option?
Yes.
Explain.
Well, first off, I can look at 2009. I know that's my part, which obviously you're talking about the first round.
Right.
But I think as far as Denver goes, a lot of it is circumstantial as far as like Allen Iverson. You could say he had superstar help, but that's just not a very good fit. He was much better off with Chauncey Billups.
Yep.
And then later on in his Knicks years, he did play really good playoff basketball a lot of the time, but was let down by Amari Stoudemire injuries. And there's a lot that I'm going to go into as far as the Knicks years go. But to say that him by himself does not, like as far as being a number 1 option on a playoff team leads to destruction, I don't think he's like, he could be a hindrance as far as it might be a little tougher to build around than LeBron. Because you definitely need defensive pieces and players that are also dynamic. LeBron, it's more of, he's kind of the engine. You just kind of put role players around him. With Melo, you need more dynamic help. But to say that he is like, as your centerpiece, you have a limit on your team, I don't think that's necessarily true.
And I'm not pushing a narrative here. I'm just asking, based off of these individual performances, obviously we see a lot of dips in efficiency.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, again, like, I think it should really be pointed out. Number 1, there was clearly, like, those Denver teams were not built well at all. It seemed like heavy on offense, nothing on defense. And also, like, look at the teams they faced, right? Like you said, it is circumstantial. What can you do? Like, you go up against the Spurs in 05 and 07. Like, you go on the court. You tell me what you can do. So I don't want people to think I'm pushing a narrative here. I think the only year or the season that really can be pointed at the Nuggets and been like, what the heck were you guys doing, was the Clippers year. Because when you take an in-depth look at that year, also Elton Brand went off that season. He had I think it was one of his 2 All-Star seasons in 05-06. But when it came to the playoffs, the Clippers didn't have a single player averaging over 20 points per game. I think the highest was 17. And the Nuggets just ultimately couldn't come through. And I think that was the one season that they could have got out the first round before 09.
Yeah, and aside from the Kobes of the world, those mid-2000s were a lot of just garbage basketball.
Yeah.
And I don't mean garbage basketball as it wasn't entertaining, because it was entertaining. It's the fact that it was just low efficiency, a lot of scrappy defense, not a lot of shots being made. So as far as the efficiency drops, like it's definitely noticeable to the point where you could say he was not a Kobe Bryant level scorer at this time. He may have had one season where he could be not like neck and neck, but like somewhere in the realm. If you know what, like he's just not on the same level as Kobe.
It's going to be very interesting to compare players like Melo to like other stars, like for example, like Jason Tatum, especially when we look at efficiency, because the game is so much more different.
That's what I was going to say, because now you look at today where these guys are averaging 30 a game and their efficiency is much higher, especially in the playoffs.
But it's much easier.
But it's a lot easier. And
much
also,
easier to have a higher efficiency.
There's a lot of instances where players don't show up in big moments, where Melo might pull through. But then it's like, do you have that efficiency trade-off? Or it's like, is it worth having someone that can make a big shot, but can't, be as efficient the rest of the game? That's why Melo gets a lot of crap, because he was like a scorer. He didn't do much else besides score.
You guys got to understand too. You look at this efficiency, but like these games would end at like a solid 81-76 final score.
You needed every bucket you could get. Bro.
Like.
But if I could
we want to segue into 09,
if I could lead into 2009, I mean, this was a year where the Nuggets won 54 games. They were the second seed in the West, and they had dished AI to Detroit for Chauncey Billups. I think AI played like 3 games. You could fact check that, but the lineup going into the playoffs was Chauncey Billups, Dante Jones, Melo, Kenyon Martin, and Nene. Against the Hornets, they won in 5. Melo played very well, 24, 6, and 5 on 47% shooting. Chauncey Billups was also on fire on this playoffs. He was a much better fit to the Nuggets than AI. He shot 65% from 3 in round 1. Round 2 against the 6-seeded Mavs, the Nuggets win in 5. Melo averages 30 and 7 on almost 50% shooting. Billups is 21 points a game on 50, 40, 90. And then you have the Lakers, where I don't know if you've seen all the TikTok edits where it's like Melo and Kobe just ripping at each other for position and all that. It's like, oh, Melo actually played defense. And it's very interesting because like I feel like those are misleading to the point where it looks like it was a 7-game series in those videos where the
it's
Lakers,
like a scrappy. I mean, it was a scrappy series. It is definitely one of the cooler series to look back on.
The Lakers won in 6, but it was 2-2 to start off. And from like a bird's eye view of the whole series, Melo averaged 27 on 41% shooting. I mean, the rest of the Nuggets just were not efficient. And Kobe averaged 34 a game on 48% shooting. So Kobe obviously was, like from a bird's eye view, the much better player. But if you go from game to game, like in game 1, Kobe had 40, Melo had 39. Melo was much more efficient, but the Nuggets lose by 2. So it's a very scrappy, like first 4 games of the series. Then Melo had a game where he shoots 3 for 16, but like the other role players are wide open. So I'd have to go and watch the full tape to see if like they're just forcing him to pass out and it's J.R. Smith and Chauncey Billups are making shots. But that's not something we have the time to dive into today. But just the fact of the matter is, people tell you, so Melo really battled Kobe. He did for a couple of games, but Kobe was the far superior player. So don't let those videos make you think that Melo was locking up Kobe. Not. Yeah, it was 34 a game on back 48% shooting. Like, it's Kobe, man. But
to be fair, though, Kobe has said, and he has mentioned that Melo did give him a lot of problems. Like when they asked like Kobe, like who are the players that gave you the most problems in your career? Melo did come up. Yeah. Melo did come up. So I mean, kudos to Melo for that.
There's people who like.
I know what you mean. Like that one clip where it's like Kobe trying to post up Melo and Melo's just like sitting there. It's like, watch the next 10 seconds of that clip and see what happens.
It's a little misleading.
Yes.
But the Lakers went on to win the championship. That was Melo's only real shot to contend for a title in Denver. And even that, like that team was not, they were that great. I mean, Kenyon Martin was older. Nene was not
it was a fun team to watch, to be fair, but
yeah. But how about New York?
I'm gonna sit here and just listen.
So Melo always wanted to go to New York, and there is a big debate as to whether or not he should have just stayed for the rest of the 2011 season, and go over in free agency. But he did get traded sometime after the All-Star break to the Knicks. The deal was Melo and Chauncey Billups. Chauncey Billups was playing really well at the time, but he was 34. The Knicks also got Sheldon Williams, Anthony Carter, and Ronaldo Balkman, for what that's worth. Denver got some pretty good Knicks role players from a season where Amari Stoudemire was an All-NBA caliber player. People said it could have been his best season. He was like kind of an MVP voting. Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Raymond Felton, Timofey Mozgov, and a first-round pick is what Denver got back. So it kind of gutted out the team to where in 2011, the Knicks finished 42-40. Melo only played like 27 games. But that team going into the playoffs was Chauncey Billups, Landry Fields, who was very young. He was like 21. Melo, Amari Stoudemire, and Ronnie Turiaf, with the only notable off the bench being like Tony Douglas, who was a Knicks legend. Tony Douglas, a Knicks legend. But aside from, obviously, Knicks fans thought this team should win a title right away because Amari was second-team All-NBA. They got Melo. But Knicks fans are stupid, and I will be the first one to say that. The Knicks were second in offense and 28th in defense through Mike D'Antoni. Yeah. It was like because Amari don't play no defense. He's a big dude down there. He does not play a lick of defense. So in round one in 2011, I mean, Melo played well compared to the rest of the team. He shot 38% from the field, but he was 26, 10, and 5. Amari was dealing with a back injury where he averaged just 14 and 8. And considering those are the only two dudes on the team, really, they just fell apart. They got swept. Landry Fields started all 4 games and shot 20% from the field. Chauncey Billups.
Landry Fields is a legend, bro.
I have his signature on the ball back there. I met him. Chauncey Billups only played 1 game in the series. The only notable game from Melo was in game 2. He went for 42, 17, and 6 in a 3-point loss, but that's just how outmatched they were by Boston. So that year is kind of like a throwaway as far as his Knicks tenure, because the whole point of this episode is for me to push the narrative and just honestly the facts that the Knicks were not Melo's fault. The Knicks were the Knicks' fault, and they ruined Melo as opposed to Melo ruining the Knicks. There's a lot of narrative surrounding that Melo just can't win basketball, and it's because of his New York tenure that proves that. But there's a lot that went on during his career where it kind of prevented him to win. 2011's a throwaway. Amari's hurt. He was an All-NBA level player.
I agree.
Chauncey Billups, the only other notable scorer on that team, only played 1 game in the series. That's throwaway.
Did you know Landry Fields is the GM of the Hawks?
I knew he was in the front office somewhere.
Yeah, he's the GM.
Shout out Landry Fields.
Shout out Landry Fields.
He was dope.
Yeah.
2012. That offseason, there was kind of a roster flip because at this point, all the New York fans are like, just year one, kind of retool. It's kind of like what the Mavericks did with Kyrie Irving. When you get him, it's like, all right, the team's gutted. Now we're going to kind of build around him. This is when it really starts. So in 2012, they go into the year by adding Tyson Chandler, fresh off that Mavericks ring, who was really good, still Defensive Player of the Year candidate, who did win a DPOY. Baron Davis was a starting point guard. So you had a roster full of Baron Davis, Landry Fields, Melo, Amari Stoudemire, Tyson Chandler. J.R. Smith they added with Iman Shumpert, who they drafted. Jeremy Lin, this was Linsanity's year. Tony Douglas, Jared Jeffrey, Steve Novak, Mike Bibby. So this is like a competent playoff team at this point. The team went 18-24 under Mike D'Antoni, and Mike Woodson stepped up after D'Antoni just relieved himself. He didn't get fired. And the Knicks went 18-6 under Mike Woodson. And D'Antoni, he went 18-24, but he also was the coach during Linsanity. So like they were a lot worse than they should have been because Jeremy Lin was. We're not going to get into Linsanity. That should be another deep dive by itself. But he was he outplayed Kobe 1 game.
That if you don't know about Linsanity,
Bro.
I think everybody does. But
man, Linsanity. And that's a whole. I'm not going to get into the whole did Melo ruin Linsanity thing. But Linsanity did get injured, which is why he missed those 2012 playoffs, which I'm going to get into it. The Knicks offense under, what's his name? Mike Woodson went from 2-17, but their defense went from like 28-5. This was helped a lot by Tyson Chandler and Iman Shumpert, really good defenders. But the 2012 playoffs, they have to play the Heat. The Knicks are the 7th seed. They're playing the 2-seed Heatles. Melo won the 4th game with 41 points, averaged 28 on the series. Jeremy Lin was out the entire playoffs. Amari Stoudemire this time was becoming a shell of himself. They added, what's his name? Bargnani the next year. That's how bad, not Bargnani the next year, I'm sorry. But that's how bad Amari Stoudemire was getting. He was like 15 a night at this point. And he was the guy that Melo was teaming up with. There were talks of Chris Paul coming over to form this super team of 3 guys. And now Amari Stoudemire is literally just a shell of himself. Going into 2013, this is like the Knicks' coveted Melo year, where Mike Woodson takes the team to 54-28. The roster, they add back Raymond Felton. So it's Felton, Shumpert, Melo, Ronnie Brewer, and Tyson Chandler. Amari Stoudemire literally only played 29 games, all off the bench, and averaged 14 points. Some other people that like really contributed to the team was a 39-year-old Jason Kidd, Steve Novak, J.R. Smith, Pablo Prigioni, Chris Copeland, and James White. Melo led the league in scoring and was 3rd in MVP voting. So this is a team that almost won 55 games without who's supposed to be their second best player in Amari Stoudemire. So this was really like a Melo MVP candidacy type year. They were a 2nd seed. I don't know if you remember that famous Stephen A. Smith rant where he's talking about the Knicks, how they're going to beat the Heat. But this was a year that was like, it was really hyped. It was really hyped. In the 2013 playoffs, they beat the Celtics easily in 6. Melo averaged 29 a game. And in round 2, they play Paul George, and the team kind of crumbles. Melo averaged 28 on 43% shooting. So at this point, he's like a pretty established playoff performer, I'd say. We talked about his efficiency dips before, but he is no longer a hindrance if he ever was. But their second leading scorer was J.R. Smith, and he shot 28%. Jason Kidd played in all 6 games of the series, played for 89 minutes in the series, did not score a single point.
Bro, didn't he become a coach the season after? Like, come on, cut him some slack.
But I mean, that is true. He was 39. But I guess the point of this,
like, bro, he was old.
But the point of this season is like, yes, they were the 2nd seed. Yes, they had some magic. But what are you expecting out of a team that is like Melo and defense and role players? They have spot scoring. Steve Novak hit a 3. There's still not really any dynamic talent, which you would have gotten with Amari Stoudemire. So, I mean, they lose to the Pacers, who were the 3 seed, but, I mean, they would have got beaten by the Heat anyway. This, as far as, like, competing for a title goes, none of this so far has gone on Melo. This has just been Amari's bad back and whatever's going on with him.
Situational.
It's all situational.
Yeah.
Now, in 2014, the team starts to crumble. The Knicks with a pretty similar roster. This is when they added Bargnani. Stoudemire is literally just coming off the bench now and dealing with injury. They went 37-45. They missed the playoffs. The only highlight was Melo did hang 62 points on Michael Gilchrist.
Yeah. Do you remember the graphic?
Yes. Yeah.
The 62 versus 4 points? That's the funniest graphic of all time, in my opinion.
Shout out the Lexus player comparison. It was like 57 points, like 20 for 24 shooting, and then it was
I need to pull that up.
Yeah. That is hilarious.
Chris. I'm getting that up. That's too funny.
And what's even crazier is I think Melo got pulled with at least 8 minutes left on the clock.
It was this is it. Player matchup presented by Lexus.
Yeah.
56 points, 22 for 30 for 22 out of 30 shots. 6 for 10 from 3, 10 rebounds compared to Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, 4 points, 2 for 4, 0 for 3, and 2 rebounds.
Shout out Michael Kidd-Gilchrist.
Shout out Michael Kidd-Gilchrist.
And when I tell it, because I've went back and like tried to see who he was actually doing the scoring on, he caught at least 8 middies, like in his grill, like eight jumpers straight in his grill. But that was really all that happened in 2014, aside from Phil Jackson being announced as the president of basketball operations on March 14th. This was probably one of the most detrimental things that have happened in sports history. The Knicks were already like in purgatory as far as basketball goes. Melo was nearing the age of 30. And because of Phil Jackson coming here, right, he managed MJ, Kobe, Shaq. He's dealt with hotheads like Dennis Rodman, Meta World Peace. He is the quote-unquote Zen master. He has 13 rings as a player and a coach. Because of this, Melo was convinced, I'll sign here for 5 more years, $124 million, to stick with the Knicks, even after their mediocre season. He's expecting to win. This is his quote, "I'm looking forward to continue my career in orange and blue and to work with Phil Jackson, a champion who builds championship teams. Madison Square Garden is the mecca of basketball, and I am surrounded by the greatest fans in the world." The first move that Phil Jackson makes as the president of basketball operations for the New York Knicks is to fire the entire coaching staff. Mike Woodson, gone. His entire bench, gone. He brings in Derek Fisher to run the ancient triangle offense used in the 3rd century AD that helped win Michael Jordan his rings and Kobe his rings. Except now you're doing it with a 30-year-old Melo and a a non-offensively gifted Tyson Chandler. I don't know what's going on. Steve Kerr was also a candidate for the job. Funny story. We actually my family was in LA in like 2014 summer. For some reason, I forget why. We were at a Anaheim Angels game, LA Angels game, and we saw Steve Kerr there. And this was during the time where he was making the decision, and he was rumored to be a Knicks coach. We saw him sitting there. My dad was like, you should really join the Knicks. He's like, oh, I don't know, man. But we actually saw him at the time they were making this decision. So they hired Derek Fisher, and at this point, Knicks fans are still pretty hyped because they have someone that should bring them some success as someone who has done for his entire NBA player and coaching career. The next move he makes, this is Phil Jackson. Tyson Chandler and Raymond Felton were traded away to the Mavs for Jose Calderon, Wayne Ellington, Samuel Dalembert, Shane Larkin, and 2 second-round picks, later used for Thanasis Antetokounmpo and Cle Anthony Early. Shout out Jose Calderon, but that is an awful trade. Now, going into this season, the 2014-15 season, the Knicks went on a 2-30 stretch. Two wins and 30 losses. Phil Jackson traded J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert to the Cavs for Lou Amundsen, Alex Kirk, and a 2019 second-round pick. They also got Lance Stevenson from the Thunder. This is when you guys got Dion Waiters in OKC. Knicks fans were furious because everyone loved Shump and JR, and they were not an issue in the 2-for-30 stretch. At this point, it's a full-on tank. The Knicks win 17 games this season. They lose 65. Now, you could think, Phil Jackson's going into a rebuild mode, and this is all a part of his plan. Except after the season, Phil Jackson says, so far, my experiment has fallen flat on its face. So this was not a part of the plan. Tanking was never a part of the plan. How do you accidentally win 17 games after being a 54 wins 2 years before? How is that possible?
That may be the saddest attempt at winning. Like, if you get 17 wins because you're tanking, fair enough. But if you're trying to win...
Bro, he was trying to win. You want to know who started more than 15 games on the Knicks that year? I'll list them off. This is aside from like Tim Hardaway Jr., Melo, like the productive guys. Jose Calderon, Langston Galloway. Shout out Langston Galloway, Knicks legend.
That was the 10-day guy. That was when he got the 10-day opportunities.
Langston and Galloway was a dog.
Yeah.
Lou Onmanson. Jason
not a dog.
Smith.
Not
Lance
a dog.
Thomas. Lance Thomas is a dog. Lance Thomas was real good.
I mess with Lance Thomas.
Shane Larkin.
Dog moments.
Quincy Acey. I love his beard.
Dog.
Love
Dog. That is the definition of that's Kimbo Slice in a Knicks jersey. Dog.
Samuel Dalembert. Cole Aldrich.
Not a dog.
Alexei Shved.
Oh, biggest dog in the existence of dogs.
Travis Ware also played 50 games. This was in a season where the New York Knicks were trying to win.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. Didn't Bargnani start a bunch of games that year too?
No, I'm saying aside from the somewhat productive guys.
Okay.
Like those are guys outside of like the supposed everyday starters. Melo played 40 games. He averaged 24 points per game. But this was just a throwaway, and it was not supposed to be, apparently. Now, 2015 offseason, Phil Jackson makes probably the only good move he's ever made, which was also seen as a bad move at first. Drafts Kristaps, 4th overall. You remember the Michael Rappaport video?
Of course, Tingus Pingus.
Tingus Pingus. I've never heard of that TV.
Yeah, I messed with Michael Rappaport because of Prison Break. That's how I knew him. But yeah,
that guy actually follows me on TikTok. But
shout out Michael Rappaport.
Shout out Michael Rappaport. They draft Kristaps. They trade Tim Hardaway, who was already like a pretty solid Knick, for Jerry and Grant, who was the 19th pick in the draft. As free agents, they sign Aaron Aflalo, Robin Lopez, and Derek Williams. So it's literally like win now moves. It's like a partial rebuild, if you will, because obviously you're not going to let a 31-year-old Melo just hang out to dry in a whole rebuild. So he's like signing these players to win some games, but you're obviously looking for Porzingis and Jerry and Grant, I guess, to provide some impact on the development side. That season, they win 32 games, so it's less horrendous than the first season. But Derek Fisher is fired midway through for Kurt Rambis. The lineup was Jose Calderon, Aaron Aflalo, Melo, Porzingis, and Robin Lopez. Melo averaged 22 a night. At this point, some shots are being taken away from him, but he's just out there kind of getting his buckets for no reason. Porzingis looked real solid. The Knicks actually started out 8-6, but everything else fell apart. Yeah, they ended up 32-50. The 26. What?
Like compared to 17, it ain't bad.
It ain't that bad.
I'd take it over 17.
But now get this: next season in the off season, Jeff Hornacek is hired. They trade for Derrick Rose, who's still on his MVP contract. Set at the time, this was a buttload of money, $21 million for the year.
Right.
They add Brandon Jennings. Joakim Noah was making like 18 M's a year.
Yeah, didn't he sign a 64 4-year deal?
Don't remind me about
64 mil for a year. I know that, like, bro, I knew that from the back of my head because of how stupid that deal was to me when I was a kid. Like, that's how quick I was to remember it.
That is an
64 mil on 4 years.
And shout out Courtney Lee. Courtney Lee was solid as a Knick.
Courtney Lee's dope. Yeah,
but
he was
basically,
dope in
the Knicks formed this quote-unquote super team to now compete with Melo, they signed Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah to mesh with a superstar scorer in Melo, who's like now 32 years old, and a young and up-and-coming star in Kristaps Porzingis.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Aaron Aflalo signed that season as well?
I mentioned that, yeah.
I remember like an old...
Yeah. Shout out Aaron Aflalo.
Aaron Aflalo.
They won 31 games that season.
That super team.
One less than the year before.
The super team.
Yeah. That season, Derrick Rose averaged like 18. Porzingis was like 18. Melo was like 22, but they just sucked. Phil Jackson, after the season, came out and said, this is sometime during the season. This is irrelevant to do with the Knicks, but it has to do with Melo. Phil Jackson came out and called LeBron's business associates his posse. Like, he just used like a very like disrespectful term.
Yeah.
And Melo was really upset with this because he was LeBron's friend, obviously. So this started some tension between Phil Jackson and Melo during the season, where after the season, Jackson said, "We haven't been able to win with Melo on the court. He'd be better off taking his talent to go win a championship." You're not allowed to say, like, players are not allowed to say they want to go play for another team. And the NBA, what's it called? The head of the
NBPA, right? The Players Association?
The head of whoever that was at the time came out and called out Phil Jackson for being an executive saying that to a player. Now Porzingis was upset with the Knicks drama and missed an exit interview, and Jackson was willing to trade him because to protect the future of the New York Knicks. That's what the reason is. Even after he was their most promising and bright player of the last however many years.
Right.
So now Knicks fans are really upset with Phil Jackson. His last move as the president of the Knicks in the 2017 offseason, he drafts Frank Ntilikina, 8th overall. and Damian Dotson in the second round. James Dolan fired him a week later. James Dolan might be the only man on earth who's worse than Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson famously fell asleep during player workouts and missed the opportunity to take Donovan Mitchell over Frank Ntilikina. Melo was then traded to the Thunder for Enes Kanter, Doug McDermott, and a second-round pick.
That's literally the first line I have.
We got to watch Mario Hezonja, Michael Beasley, Marcus Morris all lead our glorious New York Knicks to 17 win
Hezonja
records.
And all three of those guys were dogs.
They were fun. They were fun.
Yeah, they were
watch.
dogs. Yeah,
they
were
saying.
dogs.
They were fun to watch. But
as Hoops City,
can I just
have the floor, please?
Going year by year with the Melo narratives that you've heard of, you can't win with him, he ruined the Knicks. Was any single season his wrongdoing to the point of taking this team to win a championship?
No.
Any year?
No. And you know why I think that we put so much criticism on these guys? Guys like Melo, LeBron James. LeBron actually ruined the narrative for every single player in this generation, because when you see a guy like LeBron do everything he can by himself to carry a team, if you're not replicating that, you're instantly seen as the issue, especially if you're the number one option. And I think people don't talk about that enough. I mean, kudos to LeBron. He was so good that he literally made it impossible to be seen as successful in this generation. But that's not how the NBA usually works. And I think once LeBron retires, especially over these next few seasons, we're going to see a completely huge shift, because I don't see a player right now in the league that can do what LeBron did. They're not going to emulate that. We're probably not going to see that for years. To the point where LeBron, you can literally just have LeBron and George Hill and go to the finals.
That's the thing. Like Luka has done similar, but nowhere near to the extent.
Not even near it. And it's showing more and more how good LeBron James is. But in Melo's case, to be fair, like you said, again, when they did have a decently built team, injuries came into play. Other than that, I mean, look at the decisions they made as a front office. Look at the tension that was built. People don't really understand the effect that background stories can have, for example, like drama. And you don't think about that drama even 2 seasons after, right? In the moment, you can apply it and kind of put the blame. But then if a generation were to look back, nobody's going to think, well, Phil Jackson was messing around and kind of horsing around with that Knicks team, right? Nobody's going to think that. Everybody's just going to think, well, damn, Melo could have won in New York, right? So no, I don't put any fault on Melo, and if anything, I put the fault on LeBron James. No, but seriously, that's something that, and I'm so passionate about that, and nobody talks about it to the point where, and that's why I love these deep dives. Players do not get near the respect they deserve, because guys like LeBron, guy like LeBron, just made it so he really underrated the whole generation of hoopers because of how much he was able to dominate.
Yeah.
If you take LeBron James out of the picture, how different does the league look? There's not a guy who's dominating. There isn't.
And you talk about, this is one of the better rosters that Melo had in his late Knicks years. It's not smack dab in the middle of his prime, but this is late prime. This is a point in your career where you're past the MVPs and numbers. You're just
taking
trying
a
to
step
win
back.
rings.
You got to take a step back.
It's less that helps, but it's also, this is strictly this is ring season. Your early 30s, I feel like, are ring season. And he was put out there with Jose Calderon, Aaron Aflalo, a young Porzingis, and Robin Lopez. What are you supposed to do about that?
Running a triangle. Running a triangle. Yeah, no, I put nothing on Melo, man. I think they were trying to.
They had Mendugas Kuzminskis running spot minutes off the bench with Willie Hernan Gomez. Ron Baker. Shout out Ron Baker.
Shout out Ron Baker. Shout out Ron Baker. Shout out Ron Baker. Seriously.
But that's what they were putting out there.
No,
bro.
I agree with you. I think, again, and it's something that kind of gets brought up in every single deep dive. You guys got to understand how hard it is to have success in the 2010s.
And
very hard.
Can I say this last thing? Because we've obviously talked about the Melo side of things. And this is not his fault, what I'm going to say. But Phil Jackson should know better than to try to rebuild a mediocre team around a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
Close to 30.
It's not LeBron. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You can do that with LeBron.
Because you have what was their trade, quote unquote, trade assets were JR, Shumpert, Tyson Chandler, Raymond Felton. At this point in their careers, they are not going for a first round pick apiece.
They're not going for anything that makes you better.
that roster was supposed to be completely blown up, and Melo was supposed to be traded for more assets. The fact that he tried to rebuild that team around Melo is, well, it's not honorable, but it's
and
an
they
honorable
signed him to a huge deal, right? They gave him a big bag.
I forgot to say that Phil Jackson got the biggest contract in North American sports front office history at 5 years, $60 million. And there's rumors saying that he didn't want the job when Dolan first gave it to him for like $20 million, and he just raised the price until he couldn't say no. So people like speculate, was he really not that serious about the job?
Yeah,
because it really looks like he just toyed with the Knicks. Because when you trade Shump and JR and your valuable pieces, sorry, Ryder likes Melo.
Yeah.
Like it was meant to be a disaster, and the real way to do it would be to ditch Melo for more pieces, trade him while he's hot, and build around someone like a Porzingis and go through a Rockets type rebuild with what you're seeing with them now. But yes, they had 2 awful seasons, or 3. I don't know, but they and now it looked pretty promising with Jalen Green and what's his name, Asar.
Hey.
I'm forgetting. Well, I'm saying they look really promising now, the Rockets, because they went through a true rebuild. So the Knicks had to endure through maybe 3 or 4 more years of just awful basketball afterwards because of their decision to try to rebuild around Melo. And I don't know if anyone could have done that successfully. And I think Phil Jackson would have been better to say that, to not make that promise to Melo, to make him sign that 5-year extension, if you know what I mean.
Yep. No, yeah, it's interesting. Phil Jackson, my introduction to Phil Jackson was the Knicks era, so I never understood how influential he was to the Bulls and Lakers, especially until I got older. So my whole grade school come up, I thought Phil Jackson was an idiot. I didn't know why he was so respected.
He was also pushing 70 at the time.
No, to be fair, again, I'm not hating on the guy. I'm saying that was my introduction to Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
That's not a great introduction.
I didn't enjoy that.
We're an hour in, so I do want to go over obviously Melo's late career here. So I'm going to go over OKC, Portland, and LA here, and Houston, the short stint in Houston. But I do want to touch base on that, and I do have one final banner point I want to bring up with you at the end, and I think that'll be a great way to wrap up the episode. But as Hoop mentioned, obviously Melo was traded to OKC for Cantor, McDermott, and a future draft pick. And this was Melo's
Can I say one more thing? Sorry.
What?
You remember when Enes Kanter kissed the Knicks logo?
Yes, I do remember. And then he airballed. It's the funniest thing ever. That's the definition of the Knicks in the 2010s.
Yeah.
But this was Melo's most disappointing season of his career, and it revealed that he was unfortunately coming to the end of his prime. Melo went from being a consistent 20-plus points per game player in New York to dropping to 16.2 points per game in his lonesome season in Oklahoma. Now, you may think this could be attributed to the lesser role since he was beside PG and Russ, but if you take a closer look at his stats, you can see that he dropped in his efficiency, going from 43.3% in his final season with New York to 40.4% in his one season with OKC. While the OKC Big Three showed great flashes throughout the season, it was ultimately the inability to sacrifice and put aside egos that led to their immediate downfall in their one season. Since we're focused on Melo for today, I'm obviously going to touch base on Melo's side of things and kind of not look at, PG and Russ. But going through the stats of that season, you can see that through the first 10 games, Melo was averaging 21 to 22 points per game, leading the way in scoring for OKC. But it was around the 20-game mark where you see Melo's attempts per game get really low, showing that he was clearly starting to sacrifice his role. When reports indicated that Melo should start coming off the bench, Melo publicly voiced his frustration, stating that he wouldn't come off the bench, sparking the infamous meme, AOP, they say I gotta start coming off the bench. Or they say I gotta come off the bench, sorry. Melo was known for taking a lot of contested jumpers in OKC and not making them, and he also had a career-low TS percentage of 50%, and his on-off numbers clearly indicated he was negative on both ends of the floor. The playoffs is where Melo really got exposed, having an offensive rating of 89 in that Utah series. Simply put, Melo was clearly out of his prime when he was in OKC, and it showed he was not the same guy he was in New York and Denver. After a failed season, it was obvious that OKC needed to make a change, and they decided to ship off Melo to the Hawks in exchange for Dennis Schroeder. Fun fact, Melo never missed a shot in a Hawks jersey.
He got a jersey, though.
Yeah. He would eventually get waived by the Hawks, never playing a game for them, and he signed to Houston the following season, where he only played 10 games, averaging 13.4 points per game on 40.5% shooting. The Rockets would eventually get rid of Melo 10 games into the season, and it seemed like Melo would be bounced out of the league following this, not landing a role with anybody until the next season on November 14th, 2019, where he was able to spark some life back into his career. Carmelo Anthony in Portland played the best basketball he had played since his New York days, bumping up his efficiency and, more importantly, accepting the role of playing off the bench. Once Melo was able to transition into being more of a role player and a scoring spark, he was able to find a spot in the league again, being able to stick around in Portland for 2 seasons before signing a 1-year deal in LA in the 2021-2022 season, which was ultimately the final season of Melo's career before retiring. Taking a look at that Lakers team, which was a complete failure, as we all know, as it was very recent, it should be noted that Melo was actually one of the highlights of that team. He showed up and did what he was signed to do, being a reliable scoring spark off the bench, putting up practically the same numbers he did in Portland, sending him off on a much better note than what would have been if he never signed a deal after Houston. And this segues into my final banter point for you, Hoop. Do you think if Melo sacrificed the role of being a starter and having a bigger role much earlier, aka the OKC days, that he would have found more success and never had to take that break where he was out of the league?
I think it's an obvious yes, but it's interesting when you've been relied upon to create your own shots to then only be asked to spot up. Now, I think it was definitely an ego thing. If it had been like 2K and you just get to put him here and just let him shoot, then it would have been easier for him to play with OKC especially. Like, even in Portland, there were times, like, you saw the videos where he was, like, dicing up Zion. Like, he still had opportunities in the mid-range or whatever. But if he had found that rhythm earlier, not only would he have extended his career and played those that year when he dropped out of Houston, but he also would have climbed up the scoring list all time. He's 9th all time in scoring, and he didn't play for how long was that absence? 70 games?
Yeah. No. He didn't play the whole season and didn't sign until November of the following season.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of like accolade
and a
talk
lot
that
of
could have
weird
been
guys
boosted.
got signed in that time. Like, he was not getting.
Yeah.
I remember.
But I think that's an obvious yes. I was gonna say with OKC, as far as like you said he took a scoring dip after a certain amount of games in the season. Were they winning
around the
when
20
he was putting
game
up?
mark?
When he was putting up however many a game, was the team actually winning, or was that like a coaching change?
I don't have that number, which is actually a cool thing to ask. I should probably look into. I can look into that right now, actually, while we.
2017. That I'll
18.
say. I mean, at that point, he was what, like 33 years old.
Yeah, he was getting old. To be fair,
I don't think there was a season in Melo's career where you can pin losing out on a ring on him. There's times where you could just say you should have been a better player. But for who Melo was, which is not this LeBron, Kobe type player, but he's also better than a lot of fringe all-stars. I think he did what he was supposed to do. And it's unfortunate that he lost out on a ring. I think he really could have fought for one, considering he is a really good head-to-head player with superstars. Like, he really did fight Kobe. He could fight LeBron in that Heat series. So if he had been surrounded with better units, especially in those 2012, 2013, 2014 years, if more people stayed healthy. If Amari Stoudemire is really the killer, because those were the teams where we're actually kind of built well, and then Amari just kind of folded. But the late years, he just had no shot because Phil Jackson's an idiot.
The Thunder were 4-6 in their time, with like in the first 10
Gotcha.
games where Melo was the leading scorer. But that's a great way to end the episode. This was a fun one. Obviously, Melo's obviously a great name. I'm glad we were able to put some respect on his name and kind of go through the situational things that he had to go through. Surprisingly enough, he went through a lot that nobody really talks about. So that was definitely cool to do. And as always, make sure to show love on the episodes. Please give us a rating on Spotify if you can, and Apple Podcasts, 5-star. And also leave us a comment on YouTube if you're listening from there. Make sure to subscribe. And we appreciate all the love we've been getting. Again, apologies for the little bit of the break without any indication on why we're taking the break. It was really just business. Like, we had to get things sorted out for the pod. Happily enough, again, the morale's up. We're doing great. So don't stress on that end. And we'll be back on our regular scheduled weekly episodes. This was a fun deep dive, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.